This is a first for me. Am I using this right? Okay. Yeah, please tell me if I'm doing anything wrong as far as the mic stuff. I've never worn one of these before. I have with me my son, Mark, who is my technical assistance person, and he helped me put this lovely presentation with, I'm not familiar with Pressy. It's a new PowerPoint type thing, and he helped me put it all together because he's much more technologically savvy than I am, and we already averted a couple catastrophes with the technology this morning. But I hope you'll forgive me. I wanted to start this morning with a fairy tale. I normally work with preschool children, so it was kind of interesting. I was looking at different video clips that the UUA had related to this topic, which they have a ton of resources on. And I happened to, on one of the websites, find this, and we really liked the video, and it was kind of cute and kind of funny. I thought maybe it would kind of pique you guys' interest before I go through the topic from what the UUA's perspective is. But we'll start with this.
Safe streets, jobs for everyone. There were a few poor people and a few rich people. Most were in the middle. The people of this land paid for their good life by investing in their future together. They called this paying taxes. Everyone paid what they could afford. The poor people paid a little, the people in the middle paid a middling amount, and the rich people, 1% of everyone, paid more than the others. Just about everyone thought this was best. But over time, rich people decided they weren't rich enough, so they came up with ways to get richer. The first way was through tax cuts. They didn't mind if this meant fewer services for everyone. They said, why should I care about other non-rich people? I can hire teachers, safety, waste disposal people to work for me for less money than taxes cost. And then I can keep the rest of my taxes for me. The second way rich people got richer was through tax loopholes. These are laws that allow people to avoid paying taxes, with the idea that it's beneficial for other people too, if this group didn't pay. The third way rich people got richer was to pay no taxes at all. This is called tax evasion. Of course, if all the people did this, everything would fall apart. But rich people and giant companies they owned figured no one would notice. This is illegal, but many did it anyway. And so it went. In 20 years, rich people doubled their share of the land's income. Schools, public safety, the roads, parks, libraries, public transportation all went into decline. The rich people didn't care. They said everyone gets what they deserve, and they bought their own teachers, police, garbage collectors, and transportation. They also bought something else, elections. They spent so much money on politics, they elected people who liked what they liked. More tax cuts for the rich and big businesses, and fewer schools, road repairs, police, firefighters, and nurses for everyone else. When the 99% became upset, the rich people and their politicians said, there is no other way. They repeated this so often many people believed them. Meanwhile, instead of investing in things that most people could use, instead of providing jobs that paid people well like they used to, rich people found they could make more money on Wall Street. Wall Street is a place where money makes money. Here, the 1% made money so fast that they devoted more and more money to it. They took some of that money and sent it far away, where workers had no rights to produce things that workers used to produce here. When ordinary people wondered why rich people needed so much money, the 1% said, don't worry. This is good for you too, because it will trickle down from us to you. Someday you'll be rich, and then the rules we made for us will be your rules too. Some people weren't so sure about this, so the rich people bought newspapers and TV and radio stations and internet companies and paid them to repeat over and over, someday you will be rich too. There is no alternative. Soon you could hear people saying, there is no other way. Someday we'll be rich. Meanwhile, the rich people's money piled higher and higher. But after a while, it was piled too high. One day, the money fell down with a big crash. It fell down right on the houses of millions of ordinary people. It broke their houses. Then more money towers fell down. They fell on ordinary people's jobs. This is terrible. Everyone was scared. How did this happen? The government said, we have to fix this. They were so used to rich people being rich, they immediately started printing money and giving it to rich people. But they didn't give any to the ordinary people whose houses and jobs were broken by the crash. Those people said, you give the rich people money to replace their money that got lost in the crash. Why aren't you giving us any to fix our houses and our jobs? They got broken in the crash too. The government had no answer. Now the people got mad. Since they weren't sure who to be madder at, the government or rich people, they got mad at both. Rich people got worried. They thought, if the people get mad enough at us, they might take some of our money. This really upset the rich people because they loved their money more than anything in the whole world. So they devised a plan. They called it, look over there. Whenever people said, how come you rich people are getting richer while all the rest of us are losing our houses, our jobs, and our schools, the rich people pointed at someone else and said, look over there. First they pointed at the people whose houses were broken and said, look over there. Poor people caused the crash. They built their houses in the wrong place. If they hadn't done that, the money wouldn't have fallen on them. But most people didn't believe them. So the rich people pointed at someone else, this time, teachers. They said, look over there. Teachers have jobs and you don't. No one can ever fire them. And lots of teachers are bad. The schools are failing. Teachers are the reason. Bad teachers. Bad teachers. Most people didn't believe this. They remembered the problem was the crash, not bad teachers. The rich people realized it might be safer for them if someone else pointed their fingers. So they took some of their money, and even though it was just a little bit of their money, it was a lot of money since they had so much. They helped more people get elected. These politicians pointed their fingers at police, firefighters, librarians, and other public employees. They said, look over there. These people are greedy. They have jobs and you don't. You don't have retirement plans and they do. They caused the crash. Some people thought this might be true. They knew someone or something had caused the money to fall. Maybe it was the firefighters. But others remembered that firefighters helped them when their houses were on fire. They also remembered it was the 1% who built the money towers that crashed on their houses and jobs. Some people even remember those towers of money had replaced factories and jobs that people used to have. And those jobs used to have retirement plans too. And the ordinary people remembered that the teachers and firefighters lived in their neighborhoods and shopped in the same stores and didn't seem to be the problem at all. The people looked around. They saw too many students in their classrooms. They saw their roads filling with holes. They saw when they needed help, it took longer to arrive. People began to say, maybe rich people have too much money now. And maybe our problems have something to do with the 1% not paying their fair share of taxes. And also, maybe rich people should pay the same rate of taxes they used to when our land was prosperous and more people were better off. The rich people heard these things and grew worried. They told their politicians to pass laws to prevent people from organizing, prevent people from voting, prevent people from having retirement plans. But now the people understood the problem. It was rich people who crashed the money onto their houses and jobs. It was the 1% who got politicians to cut their taxes until there wasn't enough for schools, safe streets, libraries, healthcare, and parks. And it was rich people blaming everyone but themselves for what had happened. This is where we are now. And we have a question. Is there no alternative? Or can the people of this land do something to live happily ever after?
I apologize that it was a little bit political. It's hard not to address this topic and be political, and it did really, I thought, in kind of an entertaining way, illustrate the inequality that exists now in our country pretty accurately. So, do you want to pull up the presentation? So I tried to make my presentation look a little more spiritual since that was a little political. And I think that's the challenge with this topic, is to kind of balance between the political and how we can address some of these things in a more spiritual way. So escalating inequality is the topic that the UUA has picked. the General Assembly, the 2014 General Assembly chose it, and they really want it to be over the next 4 years, which is good because they've put a ton of materials here that we could actually use. And they want it to be something that we explore in a lot of different ways, as something we could learn about, as a tool for education and study groups, and groups for discussion and reflection, but then also a call to action and things that we can put into social action projects. And that's kind of why I'm presenting this, because I'm the chairperson of the Social Action Committee, and so because a lot of it we hope will eventually kind of fall into social action projects, we've kind of been asked to present it to the fellowship. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the things that they've outlined in their study guide. And I'll show you where you can get this as well. I'm going to try to put some sources at the end, and I'm also going to try to put a couple things up here if people want to come up and look at them. I couldn't print all this because some of it is very long, but a lot of it is online, and you're welcome to go look at it and print it out yourselves. I'm going to try to also put the PowerPoint maybe online if we can, if people weren't able to be here today. This is one of the quotes that the UUA has in their study guide. Challenging extreme inequality is a moral imperative. The escalation of inequality is at the root of so many injustices which our faith movement is committed to addressing. From economic injustice to mass incarceration, from migrant injustice to climate change, from sexual and gender injustice to attacks on voting rights. So this kind of explains a little bit of how they've come to select this. Then they've divided it into 4 main categories. The first is class and classism. Deepening our understanding of inequality requires us to think about our own thoughts and feelings and experiences related to class and class differences. And if you look at this study guide, which is like 20 pages long, they have, extensive resources for each topic. And like in the class and classism, they have like a little inventory that could be filled out, a personal inventory where you review your own experiences and feelings about class. And so there's elements of self-exploration. And then there's also a documentary, like under this area, People Like Us, which this could be something that we could maybe view in a cinema circle or something. And then if you take just that, People Like Us, there's an enormous amount of, and I have the link at the end. It's on PBS. There's an enormous amount of resources just under People Like Us. It's on PBS. And there's this whole study guide just for that, which is like, I don't know how many pages, 27 pages. And they've broken it up, so if someone wanted to do a whole study group just on People Like Us, they have all these broken it into little clips and little areas of discussion and more resources that could be used for that. Economic inequality, roots and realities, that's the next little subtopic. The expanding wealth gap brings to light a moral crisis in our country and in our world, which is kind of what the little video clip was about. Working towards peace, freedom, and justice for all, which is one of the things that the UUs try to do with our principles, requires us to increase our understanding of this crisis and how we got here and the impact on our current state of affairs. Inequality, class, and our congregation is the next topic or subtopic. How we can practice eradicating inequality and classism within our congregation, and how we can create communities of faith that are truly welcoming and inclusive to all. And I know that's something that we always try to do here, but I think even expanding out into the community, some of the things we've talked about in the Social Action Committee was, like, can we somehow do projects in conjunction with Salisbury University or in conjunction with some other groups, possibly the Board of Ed, possible, where can we take this within our community, where we could welcome people into our fellowship, but also use our fellowship to reach out to the community at large to address some of these issues. Even showing one of these movies and welcoming people from the community to that. There's all different possibilities. Interrupting cycles of inequality. How we take action can matter as much as whether we take action. Exploring these issues can contribute to the sustainability and effectiveness of the ministries that we offer to our wider communities. So this is where we would maybe look at where we could take a little more action. I feel like kind of educating people and bringing it to people's minds is kind of a first step, and that's kind of an action in and of itself. But then what other things could we do? And I know Jackie, I missed unfortunately Ron's talk last week, but Jackie tells me that I wanted to see it. It was really good, and that some of the things he talked about might be ways we can expand on some of these ideas as far as social action projects, and she gave me a handout about it. So that's something we can talk more about in the Social Action Committee. We also want to develop like a task force or a committee on this topic. So anyone interested as we go on, if your interest is piqued, if there's a certain little area you're like, oh, I'm really interested in that, I would like to do a talk on that, I would like to do a project on that, I would like to do a study group on that. It's just something to think about. I'm going to try to put these ideas and some of the materials out, and then we would like to open it up. We feel like it's a little too big of a project just for social action to take on, so we wanted to open it up to the whole fellowship, and we know there's a lot of people in the fellowship, like Ron, who have a lot of gifts, who have a lot of knowledge, a lot of resources and things already that they can offer to this topic, and a lot of you all might as well, or you might have an aspect of this that's really, close to your heart that you want to, work on. So I'm going to try to put as much of it out there as I can, but there's also just tons of resources besides just what the UUA has put on. I started just Googling inequality, and some of the stuff came up, just from that. And so there's definitely a lot out there with the internet makes it so easy now to find a lot of things. So these are the goals that the UUA has put out there for this. Explore the complex history and realities of economic inequality from local to global as it relates to education, income, housing, public health, democracy, etc. Gain awareness of how racism, classism, and sexism affect economic inequality by causing disadvantage to some and privilege to others. And I wanted to bring up one of the things I came across as I was just kind of doing some side research. Well, actually, I found I was cleaning out an office where I work, and I found something about the Mid-Atlantic Equity Center, I was like, this might be useful for my talk. And I wasn't even aware of them, and I went on their website, which I put at the end on my sources. They had so many resources on there. And what I really liked about their website was a lot of their studies were like from 2014. So the most current information, whereas the UUA at the end of their study guide, I can't remember now which one, whether it was it might have been the People Like Us study guide. They have some statistics at the end about class and income and how it relates to our country, but it wasn't the most current. It was like 2009, 2010, and 1999, and whereas this one, the Mid-Atlantic Equity Center, has a lot of the most recent projects people are working on, reports people are working on related to this. And one thing I really liked was that it had on there was President Obama's My Brother's Keeper task force, and it has a link to that whole report, which again, very long, but I tried to pick out some things that interested me from that. It talks about the persistent challenges that we have, that context does matter for people. Despite overall progress, some Americans have lagged behind, have fewer opportunities available to them, and continue to face roadblocks to success. One of these groups is boys and young men of color. Boys and young men of color are more likely than their peers to be born into low-income families and live in concentrated poverty to have teenage mothers, to live with one or no parent, to attend high poverty, poor performing schools, to miss out on rigorous classes, and to have teachers that are inexperienced or unqualified. In schools and in courts, these boys and young men too often receive harsher penalties for the same infractions as similarly charged white males and are less likely to be given a second chance. And I think this is one, when I first heard the topic in Escalating Inequality, I think my first thought was race and some of the current things that are going on with Ferguson and everything in our country, and just how that's brought to light even with the anniversary of Selma. How far have we really come as far as civil rights and equality? I know my son goes to Salisbury Middle School, which is, I believe, 65%, something like that, African American. But yet in the gifted and talented classes, in the STEM classes, African American students are very underrepresented. So we're, and I think what I like about President Obama's initiative is, I think that's one of the things he's trying to address. And he talks about, we have to start when these children are in preschool and before even Head Start and preschool, and how can we, address some of these things. And that's a topic that I feel like that kind of spoke to me, because it's in our society and we can see it all the time. They also say that the African American students are more likely to live in communities with higher rates of crime, increasing the likelihood of negative encounters with police and victimization by violent crime. Role models and a strong network of caring, informed adults may be unavailable to them. Even for these children, in the best circumstances, society provides negative reinforcement and at times explicit bias. These challenges are complex and interwoven, but they are surmountable with focused effort. Stories of triumph, despite these statistics, are inspiring evidence of this fact, and I'm sure it was something close to President Obama's heart, because he is a prime example of someone who was able to overcome that, as coming from the home of a single mother and everything. So again, that's another thing that's interesting if you haven't had a chance to ever look at that. Develop a spiritually grounded understanding of the impact of class on oneself, one's congregation, community, and wider society. Be inspired and equipped to act against classism and economic inequality through activities including study and reflection groups and social action projects. Experience a call arising from our UU principles, sources, and values to bridge class divides and create a more just and equal world. They had a lot of big words in this UUA study guide. I was going through this and I was like, and I know you guys are a very educated and intelligent group, but some of the words like spell check didn't even recognize, like undergird. This undergirds our principles, and I was like, what's a synonym for undergird? Because I don't want this to be too, I don't know. Go ahead, Mark. These are some of the resources I was talking about. www.inequality.org is where I got the little video clip that I showed first. PBS.org, People Like Us. Again, they have a ton that has this whole study guide. It has the movie. It has things you can order, additional books. The Minute Show on the UUA website. There, I think I had the link in one of the slides, but for the study guide. But if you just Google UUA Escalating Inequality, the study guide will come up. And I think they even have more resource pages on there that you can utilize. So there's also in the study guide worship ideas like readings and songs. So another idea of how we thought people could take this would be when our summer is coming up and people can come and speak. It's a little more informal service. If someone wanted to take an area of one of these, like I said, you wouldn't even have to start from scratch. There's so many resources that they offer on here that you could take and build a service around. That was kind of like one of our things we thought, like summer, maybe be an exploration time, maybe start with some of these, the study groups, a book club, a cinema circle. There's also another movie called Inequality for All that I stumbled across. That might be a good one, like we could do as in a cinema circle or something, and then have a discussion off of that. So then we thought maybe by the time like meetings. So that's why I also want to encourage, even if you don't feel like you have time to be on another committee, but you want to take one of these things and research it on your own, you want to do, if you have an idea, even it could be an idea we haven't even thought of or I haven't mentioned, but as you're reviewing these materials, you think of something that you would want to do, or a book you read that relates to this. Feel free to think about it and think how you might relate to this, how you might be able to, what you might be able to bring to the fellowship that would relate to this, and how you might want to participate as an individual or within the group. So we're open to any ideas people have. We're having a SAC meeting following this at 12:15, and we were hoping if people were really like fired up and wanted to participate, we could start getting names. Some ideas I thought of, even if we just want to have, like I know Liz is really good at making a Facebook page. Maybe we could make an Escalating Inequality Facebook page. Maybe we could start, emailing. I know people are very busy and it's hard to have the time sometimes to do the things you want to do. But that's why I want to put it out that just whatever way you feel like you could maybe address this, or what ideas you have that the fellowship could use. We're open to everybody's input and ideas, and whatever way people think that they could help. So, oh wait, I think I had one more slide. Oh, I think I did say some of this when I was reading it, but I wanted to end with one of the things, I think I do have one more quote after this, I kept adding stuff. But I liked President Obama's quote, if you work hard and play by the rules, you should have the opportunity to succeed. And our ability to get ahead should be determined by your hard work, ambition, and goals, not by the circumstances of your birth. And that's from his one of his State of the Union speeches. And I think there is one more thing from this is another quote from the study guide that I wanted to end with, but then I think we have maybe a couple minutes for questions, or whether, if we don't have a lot of time for questions or discussions, feel free to come to the SAC meeting if you really want to talk about it more, or email me. As people of faith, we can change the world by changing how we are together. I really liked that, because it's kind of like, we all want to change the world, but how can we really do it? And maybe one way is just by, this little group. We meet in this group. What can we do? What can we do? Engaging faithfully with escalating inequality requires us to examine our lives and practices within our congregation. This work can lead us to deep spiritual growth. So again, I wanted to tie it back in a little bit to being spiritual rather than just political. But I don't know how much time. I'm not very good with judging time. Do we have any time for questions? Or okay, did anyone have Liz?
Actually, I have, first of all, one comment.
Okay.
The irony of talking about class and using these very long words is interesting. The other thing I would like to ask, if you would, just for our visitors and folks who may not know, UUA, what does that mean? And SAC, what does that mean?
Okay, SAC is our Social Action Committee. They actually call it social justice, I think, in a lot of fellowships. I noticed when I was reading this. Is that right? Social justice is what a lot of people call it. We choose to call it social action. And we do a lot of, it's kind of like a big umbrella here. There's a lot of people who do things for SAC that aren't actually on our committee. We have kind of a small group who regularly attends, but then we have other people who do projects within the fellowship that kind of fall under social action umbrella. So we do have people, if you're interested in our committee, we have some people who don't come to the meetings but get the emails. Jackie's very good about sending out things that are politically related, that, you can write to your congressman about this, or you can support this, or she often sends out things that come from the UUSC. There's so many organizations.
Legislative Ministry of Maryland.
Okay. And the UUA is the Unitarian Universalist Association. It can be confusing because there's a lot of acronyms and a lot of different, there's a UUSC, the one Jackie was just talking about, the UUA, the UUNO as well. So, and they are, maybe you can tell, because I get confused about what the difference is. Are they the actual governing body?
The UUA?
The UUA.
Yeah, the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, that's actually the national association of all of us,
Okay.
of all y'all.
Okay, so they're the ones that would lead the national convention.
They're the ones who hold the General Assembly every year, yes.
General Assembly, okay.
Hi, I just wanted to share two things. I can't stay for the meeting, but I would really love to see our congregation get involved with Standing on the Side of Love. I already have my yellow Standing on the Side of Love shirt that I picked up at GA last year, so I'm prepared to show up in uniform. And the other thing I'd love to see us get involved with is I became a member of the UU Maryland Legislative Committee, and we as a congregation, they have I forget exactly what it's called, but we can as a congregation join them and lend them support. And I believe our old member Sarah Moulton is involved with them over in Annapolis. So if the meeting goes in that direction, please drop me an email, let me know.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. And I'll have to get up with you about the Facebook and all if we want to do something
yeah.
like that. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Bonnie. Couple things. One is you said this goes until 2018.
Yeah.
And it seems like, so we have 3 to close to 4 years ahead of us.
Yes.
It might be good to map out something that, so that we continue some activity on this over that time. I had a lot of different things, but the one thing that I wanted to ask, and maybe you've given your best shot in your presentation, but you've gone through all this and kind of done your own study, activity that, it might take the rest of this a while to catch up to you, and I just wonder, and again, maybe you've given your best shot, what do you think would be the key points of leverage at this point in order to, have any impact on this issue, from and in different aspects. You talked about inequality in schools, for instance, as on the one hand. You also, spent a lot of time talking about economic inequality.
It's hard to say because I feel like it's almost overwhelming when you start to look at all this material. It really is a lot. Like I said, this, it's 20 pages for them just to introduce, this with a study guide, and then you go into each topic, and then there's even more things that you can look up, whole books and whole movies, which I feel like I just have kind of started to scratch the surface myself. So, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of one of those topics, and it is good that we have that long, because I think there is so much that we could look up and study and do. I kind of feel like everybody might have their own, like to me, the issue with the schools kind of like hit home, and I work with children, and that's an issue, that's a piece of it that I would like to focus on if I had the time and, could think of things to do along that way. That was the piece that touched me, but maybe other people, have a certain area or aspect that touches them more. I feel like it would, I don't know that I can really say, like I know, like I said, the education, that kind of touches me because I work with children, but I don't know that I really have any solutions or anything at this point.
Okay, I'll keep this brief. I think this is a really, really great thing for our congregation to talk about and embark on a large project with it. But the one warning that I would say is that this issue, anything to do with inequality or class, is inherently political and it is inherently divisive. Even just the most bare bones milquetoast proclamation that inequality is bad and we should do something about it is inherently going to alienate someone who's in the upper class, because inequality is good for them. So you have to balance that. If you want to be welcoming to everybody, maybe you shouldn't go on this adventure, against inequality, because it's going to be divisive.
That is a concern. I was concerned a little bit about that with the video clip, that it is very hard, that it is a hard subject to approach.
Is anyone here a Wall Street banker?
I think that an important principle, one of our 7 principles, is peace, justice, and equity. And I believe that, in fact, the Gates, they are extremely wealthy people who believe in helping and in equity. So I think there's a way that we can do this, and I absolutely hear what you're saying, Chad. But I think that we as a spiritual people have to be committed to, even the poorest among us deserves a chance and deserves respect and help.
I think the other thing is that it provides us all with
I'm the microphone Nazi.
I think the other thing, and I think what's most important to me, is that it gives us all an opportunity to look at ourselves. So whether it's our upbringing, our own history, our own isms, whatever, but it gives us an opportunity to have good, honest, open conversations about who we are. And so for that, I think I'm grateful. And I agree, Chad, I think it has this might have a tendency to, to cause a little dissension or what have you. But what a fantastic opportunity to learn about ourselves and each other and move forward.
Yeah, there's a copy of one of these papers, the class action, class background inventory. If anyone wants to look at that, that's one of the first things they mention under the first topic, and that's what it asks. When you were growing up, what was your family sources of income? Describe your home and neighborhood growing up. How does the education you are getting now compare with the education of others in your family, in this generation, in the previous 2 generations? Things like that really kind of make you think. I don't know, it's hard. I feel bad. I don't want to not, answer someone's question. I feel like it's so broad, and that part of what our work is, I guess, is going to be to take the pieces that interest us most and that inspire us the most, because those are going to be what's going to lead to action. And I think it's going to be somewhat individualized, and that's why we're looking, not just to form a committee, but also to ask individuals, if you're touched or interested, how can you participate on an individual, like, presenting a sermon or leading a group. So I'm trying to keep it broad. Hopefully that's not a bad thing. But
I don't really have this very organized in my mind, but it seems to me that most of us, maybe all of us, are involved with some helping resource in the community. And perhaps we could nail those down. Maybe we could have like a volunteer action fair after one of our programs sometime. And those of us who would like to tell others about what they're up to, whether it's in WEP, the Wycomico Environmental Trust, or the Maryland Food Bank, because all of these different groups need volunteers, and I have to confess that I'm most interested in action. It just seems unfortunate if we don't tap some of the knowledge, the experience right here. Like I look at Corey and I think about habitat, among other things. And Corey is looking into what the habitat needs are, how we could be helpful. We have been helpful in the past, but not more recently, right? Yeah. And I just want to say too that one way that you mentioned is to have speakers on related subjects. Well, that's going to happen. like on April 12th, we have our Making Peace Not War observance, the 12th annual one. And the speaker is Dr. Sarah Surak. She is a political scientist and an environmental, a person who deals in environmental studies. And she'll be looking at how conflict and war impacts people around the world. And it has a great deal to do with inequality. So it just seems to me that it would be a good thing. And we've got lots of things like the mitten tree that go on, and the dental clinic that's being mentioned, and the prom gowns of Pat, and the soup kitchen, and Clint's cupboard, and Big Sister Jackie. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this whole mentoring program, and we should get Henrietta Parker in here.
Yeah.
And see if we can get a lot of mentors involved in the school, because that's where it begins.
Right, and the last thing on President Obama, the things I read from President Obama's report was the lack of concerned, caring adults. And I know from all the research I've done and things I've read, that is the key piece for children to be successful, that every child needs at least one adult who truly cares about them and is encouraging them to be successful. And where the education piece is concerned, they never have enough mentors in the school system. They never have enough big brothers, big sisters. So those are two definite programs. Okay. Well, I'm going to try to leave some of these materials up here if people want to just take a look at them afterwards. So.
Thank you, Bonnie.